Some murders are so deeply buried in time that they begin to feel untouchable. Years pass, evidence fades, witnesses die, and investigators move on. What was once a shocking crime slowly turns into a forgotten file, locked away in storage rooms and dusty archives. Families are told to accept that answers may never come. But history has shown us something powerful. Time does not always protect the guilty. Sometimes after 30, 40, or even 50 years, the truth finds a way to surface. These are the murder mysteries that refuse to stay silent, cases that took decades to finally crack. In 1968, Margaret Ellen Fox left her home after receiving a phone call about a job opportunity. Witnesses saw her get into a car with a man she trusted. That was the last time she was seen alive. For decades, investigators had nothing more than descriptions and theories. Her family lived with unanswered questions for more than 50 years. In 2021, modern DNA testing linked evidence from the case to a man who had died years earlier. Though no arrest could be made, the truth finally came out. After half a century, Margaret's silence finally spoke. In 1978, 8-year-old April Tinsley was abducted and murdered in Indiana. Her killer vanished, but he did not disappear completely. Over the years, he sent disturbing letters to police and local residents, taunting them and keeping fear alive. Investigators chased countless leads, but technology was not advanced enough to identify him. In 2018, forensic genealogy finally cracked the case. DNA from the crime scene led to a man who had lived freely for 40 years. He was arrested and confessed. After decades of terror, justice finally arrived. In 1980, 16-year-old Carla Walker was kidnapped from a car while on a date in Texas. Her boyfriend survived the attack, but the killer escaped into the night. For nearly 40 years, the case remained unsolved. Carla's family never stopped hoping. In 2020, preserved DNA evidence was tested using modern methods. The results identified a former classmate as the killer. He was arrested at the age of 60. After 4 decades, the truth finally caught up with him. In 1969, Rita Curran was murdered in her Vermont home. Investigators had no solid suspects, and the case went cold almost immediately. Her family waited for answers for more than 50 years. In 2023, forensic genealogy finally identified her killer, a man who had died decades earlier. There would be no trial, no courtroom justice. But for Rita's loved ones, knowing the truth brought peace after a lifetime of uncertainty. In 1986, Michelle Martinko was attacked and killed in a shopping mall parking lot in Iowa. The crime shocked the community, but investigators were limited by the technology of the time. For more than 30 years, the case remained unsolved. In 2018, DNA testing linked the crime to a man who had been a teenager when Michelle was killed. He was convicted, proving that even decades-old evidence can still tell the truth. In 1970, Angela Samoda was brutally murdered in her Texas apartment. Despite an intense investigation, no suspect was charged. Her case went cold, leaving her family trapped in grief for nearly 50 years. In 2018, new DNA technology finally identified the killer, a man who had committed other violent crimes. After almost half a century, justice finally arrived. In 1966, Beverly Yarush was murdered in Ohio. The crime scene suggested violence, but investigators lacked the tools to identify the killer. For nearly 50 years, the case remained unsolved. In 2014, DNA evidence finally matched a suspect who had lived a normal life for decades. He was arrested, showing that time cannot erase the truth. In 1972, Mary Jane Van Ornum was murdered, and early investigations failed to find her killer. The case went cold for nearly 50 years. In 2022, DNA evidence finally identified the suspect, bringing closure after decades of silence. In 1983, law student Lisa Ziegert was abducted and murdered in Massachusetts. Despite an intense investigation, the case went cold. For 34 years, her family waited. In 2017, DNA evidence finally exposed the killer, a local man who had escaped suspicion for decades. He was sentenced to life in prison. In 1964, Irene Garza was murdered in Texas. Fear and silence surrounded the case, and powerful influences prevented justice. For more than 50 years, no one was held accountable. In 2016, the case was reopened, and a suspect was finally charged. The truth came out, proving that silence can delay justice, but it cannot stop it forever. In 1981, a brutal murder shocked a small town. Early mistakes doomed the investigation and the killer blended back into society. For over 30 years, the case remained unsolved. In 2015, new forensic testing finally identified the murderer, closing a chapter that had been open for decades. In 1973, Thomas Bierson was shot and killed in North Dakota. The case was surrounded by rumors of corruption and fear. Witnesses stayed silent, and evidence disappeared. For more than 40 years, the truth remained hidden. Renewed investigations finally uncovered what many believed had been covered up, proving that even powerful silence can be broken. These cases reveal a powerful truth. Murder does not vanish with time. It hides, it waits, but it leaves traces behind. A single hair, a fingerprint, or a drop of blood can survive for decades, waiting for the moment when science catches up. For families, waiting 30 to 50 years is not just patience. It is a lifetime of birthdays without smiles, holidays filled with grief, and endless questions with no answers. Closure does not erase the pain, but it ends the torture of not knowing. Every cold case solved after decades is a victory for persistence. Detectives who refuse to give up, scientists who push technology forward, and families who never stop believing all played a role. As we reach the end of today's journey, remember that behind every cracked mystery is a victim whose life was taken too soon and a family who waited decades for the truth. Time may pass, but the truth has a way of surviving. Thank you for watching. If these stories moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Because no matter how long it takes, justice can still find its way back. Even after decades pass, murder leaves a shadow behind. Long after police sirens fade and headlines disappear, the pain remains alive in quiet homes and broken families. Many killers believe that if enough time passes, the truth will die with it. They grow old, start families, and live ordinary lives, convinced they have escaped justice forever. But history proves them wrong again and again. Time may slow justice, but it does not erase it. In many of these cases, the breakthrough did not come from a confession or a witness, but from evidence that patiently waited. A strand of hair sealed in an envelope. A fingerprint overlooked in the 1970s. A bloodstain stored in an evidence room for 40 years. When modern DNA technology finally caught up, those silent pieces of evidence began to speak. What once meant nothing suddenly told the entire story. For investigators, reopening a case after 30 or 40 years is like stepping back into another world. Old files are reread, faded photographs are studied again, and forgotten details are given new meaning. Sometimes a suspect who was once cleared becomes the key. Sometimes a name ignored decades ago suddenly stands out. And sometimes the answer was always there, hidden in plain sight. For families, these final answers come with mixed emotions. Relief, pain, anger, and sadness collide all at once. Knowing the truth does not bring back a loved one, but it ends the nightmare of uncertainty. It allows families to stop asking, "Who did this?" and finally begin to heal. Even when the killer is already dead, truth still matters. Closure still matters. These cases send a powerful message to the world. No matter how much time passes, no matter how carefully a crime is hidden, the truth has a way of surviving. Science advances. Technology improves. And silence eventually breaks. As long as evidence exists and someone is willing to keep searching, murder can never truly stay buried. Because justice may be delayed, but it is never completely lost.